All right, we're going to get into the meat.
We think a lot alike in terms of those financial.
We always love to have, as a startup, interactive sessions like Paul just facilitated, because it really brings to the forefront, and God bless you, 79 years old, and you just gave me the clearest understanding of what my mission is going to be, and that's visualize everything. That to me was one of the most powerful things for me, because as I'm getting older, if I don't put it into a picture, I lose it.
So I have about 30 business plans here.
I got it. Great stuff. Well, thank you for all of your contribution. Our next group is going to be really interesting, and this is where I would submit, if you have questions, raise them. We can't get into all of the specifics, and that's part of the reason why we actually have a follow-up to this, to get into a little bit more deeper of some of these concepts that we're sharing. But Aimee Hitchner is going to facilitate this group. She is an associate in the law firm here in Winter Park, Swan Hadley, and she's going to be joined by Glenn Griffiths, Raymond James, and David Poparad, who is the managing partner of our CPA firm, Brennan Fender. So without further delay, Aimee, take it over.
Hi. Can you guys hear me okay? Welcome. Thank you for attending our event. So we're really going to focus on planning for the business. The four areas that we're going to go over are just preparing for the unexpected. So first, corporate governance. So starting early on from entity formation, selecting the right entity for your business, and then moving into employee management, estate and asset protection, and then we're going to finish up with buy-sell agreements. So the first one that really is corporate governance. So you have the idea of a business. Most of you are already business owners, so you've already gone through this stage. But entity selection at the beginning of the business, careful thought at the beginning to consider what your exit plan is going to be. How do you see yourself leaving the business? Is it a big sale? Is it a buyout? Is it an asset sale? And then planning for maybe a disagreement with a partner or a death or a disability of your partner or yourself. Carefully negotiating an operating agreement or bylaws, each owner being represented by separate counsel is helpful in that situation. And then just determining in those agreements how the business will be run while you're in it and how your interest will be sold when you exit. And so for the entity selection part, I typically lean towards a limited liability company with either a partnership, taxation, or S corp. I'm going to have David talk a little bit about that.
Some of you, I know some of you don't, is everyone kind of established companies? And you don't have any startups? So you've all selected your entity already. I assume, do we have any C Corps? Or we all S Corp partnerships? Assume all S Corp. Okay, so that's good. I mean, you get the pass through. So we kind of do, usually the choice is C Corp or S Corp. And lately it's been, hey, you got to use corporate rates from a C Corp standpoint, so is that better? Usually if you run the math, it's not. You're still better off being an S Corp. At the pass-through deduction. So there's still some benefits there. So that's the best thing. And then as you plan, you succeed, and you want to spin off into a new entity, looking at what's the best structure for that. We'll look at, is it still an S Corp, or does it make more sense to put an LLC in there or an LLC in there from a pass-through standpoint? Usually, real estate's always a good example. Real estate outside of an S corporation. You'd rather have it in an LLC or a partnership, so it's pass-through. Just it's easily transferable. That's usually the reason. So, entity selection and how you transfer ownership, there could be tax implications for that. So you want to think through that and okay, how do you get the ownership to the next generation or the successor? and that. So that's something we always got to consider. Now, how many, does everyone have their shareholder agreement in place? Or is it all, say,
Working on it?
We're working on it now, negotiations.
so that's very important sometimes, and you should probably push that too, because as I told Bruce, and he knows this, but everything's good. Those agreements aren't written for when things are good. They're written for when things are bad, and it's hard to foresee when that's coming. So if you're 100% owner, then it's okay. It's probably taken care of through your state. But if you have partners and it's a handshake kind of deal and it's verbal, hey, that works when things are good. When things start going bad and hey, you need to put more money in the company and liability or there's a recession, okay, now who's responsible for that? What are their commitments to that on those partners? And making sure they're being held accountable for that.
And remember that these documents can evolve, so as your company grows and changes, you can revise your governing documents as well. Employee management, so just, I'm only going to touch briefly on this because we've got a group coming after us that's going to talk more about fringe benefits for employees but and owners. But one thing to keep in mind is creating and regularly updating your employee handbook. So that's something that I think people forget about taking care of. One of the basic things is how do you run your business and how do your employees see you. So kind of telling the story of who your business is in the handbook can be helpful. And then non-compete agreements, the question that both employees and owners often ask me is, are these really enforceable? And the answer is yes, they are enforceable. So if you are looking to hire someone that has been at an executive level at a company, make sure that they don't have a non-compete in place because they are enforceable. And if you hire them, so the language in the non-compete needs to be reasonable. So we want to make sure that you're limiting the geographic area to a reasonable location. So sometimes we'll have restaurants that are in a big entertainment complex, like Point Orlando, for instance. So we'll limit that to the executive chef can't leave and go to another restaurant in Point Orlando, but maybe they could go to another restaurant in Orlando, so that it's seen as a reasonable clause in there. And then the time period also kind of depends on industry, but 6 months to 2 years is a reasonable amount of time to restrict someone from going to compete with your business. Making sure that you protect intellectual property in those employment agreements and any and non-disparagement clauses, which should include social media. So you don't want your employees going out and disparaging you while they're working for you or after they leave your company. So that's an important piece to put in the non-compete. Does everybody have non-compete agreements?
So what level down can you put a non-compete on an employee? I mean, your janitors and that stuff kind of non-compete, but where's the logical cutoff point?
I think it kind of depends on what information they have in the company and really how valuable they are to you. So if you're a janitorial company, then maybe most of your janitors are important to have non-competes, right? They know some, maybe even a technology within that company that they have exposure to that you want to protect. So it kind of depends on your company, but I would say management for non-competes, but just kind of depends. I had a clothing store and I had non-competes for my sales assistants. I don't know how this will work.
I would say almost at any level, it's just part of your orientation, employee orientation, if there's non-compete. Because what sometimes happens is, hey, that janitor, hey, he may decide to move up. And before you know it, okay, 5 years later, he's in management, and hey, you forgot to non-compete. Now you're 5 years later, now he's in a position to do harm to your business, and now he's out because he didn't have non-compete. He knows that you forgot about it because he was a janitor when you hired him, he was a manager. So maybe the best practice is everyone gets one. It's one document, you already had set, it's standard by the company, here's your, health insurance, your application, all the new employee paperwork. Hey, part of it's the non-compete employment agreement. Read it and sign it.
I can give an example of my business. I have groomers, right? They groom the dogs. And they make sometimes connection with customers. So the people go to my store, groom the dogs, and like after 2 or 3 years, they build a clientele. They will buy a grooming truck, and they say goodbye, and then they will call, and so this all your customers, and then it hurts your business. So it depends on how strategic is the position. It doesn't mean they are not managers, but they are very important to the business driver. So I'm just about to implement this in my business.
I've seen situations too where people decide to put non-competes on employees just before they sell a business because the value of the employee matters in regard to the sale of the business. And if they try to do that without providing additional consideration to employees, that can cause a big problem.
I was going to make a comment that I'm sure we'll get to this later, that your succession planning, this is an annual event. You should do this at least annually, at least, right? The same thing, you can do an employee documents review annually as well and update those with your client as well. So one question I had was, when we talk about these non-competes, particularly, even at first level managers and line level below, can you really limit the cook, okay, like you said, from, going to work for somebody else versus starting their own business and competing, right? Comments on that?
Yeah, you can actually restrict both of those within a reasonable geographical location and a reasonable time period, absolutely. The issue is enforcing it, right? So it's a contract, right? So you sue them for breach of contract, and what are you going to recover, what are your damages? So that's kind of, you have to do that business equation, is this worth pursuing? So, it's a hurdle. So you have a responsible employee signing an agreement, they believe in the honor of the contract, and they stick to it or they breach it. They breach it, you then as a business owner have to decide, is this worth pursuing?
Well, I think the challenge, in today's marketplace with employees is how much do you want to hold that? I think IP protection is one thing versus non-compete. If I'm a contractor and I work for many different companies, there's no way I'm going to sign a non-compete that I can't compete. I can't go to work for somebody else. I mean, I wouldn't sign it. I would not come on board with you.
Sure.
So you have to take that into consideration. But at the same time, I don't want to start a company and go in and compete against the client I've been working for you for 2 years.
Right, and I think that's a strong negotiating position, for sure.
But in your case, you probably signed a non-disclosure agreement.
Right?
I agree. Non-disclosure and IP, I have no problem with that. It's just, you get a little hairy on non-compete.
Sorry, question. How transferable are they? So you change the structure or ownership of the company? How does that work?
Depends on the transfer documents, if those contracts are all transferred as well, but they're transferable. There should be an assignment clause in the contract.
But if there isn't a clause within, because within our standard non-compete, it's specific to our company. Let's say, for example, the company decides to float or sell to another company in the next couple of years. If there's nothing specific about that, does it then be cancelled? Does it automatically
If the contract
transfer?
has assignment language in it, so it could be assigned or transferred,
It could be.
it could be.
But if there's not that language, then what happens?
That could be an issue. I mean, I'd have to look at the actual agreement, but I would like to have transfer language, assignment language in that contract.
If it's not in there, probably when you do go to sell, it's going to be condition to sell. Meaning to close the agreement, all employees have to sign the new employment agreement, not compete with the buyer. So kind of, and that could decrease your sales price because one employee may say, no, I'm not doing that now. And that could be a key part. And then, okay, you need to sell now, okay, it may sink the whole deal. So probably the best practice is make sure the signable clause is in there now when you get to that point. Because you could almost put, okay, it's an annual review of all employee files and hey, we just updated this for a few languages, read it, sign it, put it back in the file and do it all at once, like when you do your health insurance review or your renewals. Hey, here's what we have to.
Okay, thanks.
It's kind of difficult because, I mean, I've been in that situation and I refuse to sign on compete. You know, I'm a licensed engineer. If I can't, and it's my livelihood, what do I do? I'm not going to do it.
Right, right. Well, and that's, again, that's your prerogative as the employee is choosing whether you want to sign it or not. As the owner, just knowing that they're enforceable, I think is helpful. Yeah.
We had to do with our company. We started people stealing our employees, and we just put non-competes on all of our salespeople, all of our counter people, all of our inside salespeople, and we ended up pulling up a bunch of money. We gave everybody incentive to do it, but we just couldn't. It's tight labor market. If you start to lose people with with no non-competes to your competitors, it's a tough way to go. It's tough. And no one liked it. Everybody in our company hated it. I was the big a-hole that no one, this is not fun.
And did you lose employees because of it? Did anybody leave?
Nobody left. Everybody signed it, but we did shell out some additional incentive to sign it. And there's transferable clauses in it and stuff like that. So it's a process. We have to sit down with everybody individually almost, and this is what's going on. And it happened after one of the people left, went after our biggest customers, right? And we didn't have a non-compete because we were the good guys. We were a nice family-owned business, and we were the good guys. And it went after our biggest customer, and everybody saw it. And so people kind of understood it. But I think it's important in today's tight labor market. If you've got key employees that they have a non-compete. And we won't hire anybody with a non-compete. We ask them right away. That's the first thing we ask them. Do you have a non-compete? Half the people go, I don't know. I signed something. I don't know. Where is it? Well, I don't want to go to my HR department because if I go there and ask for a non-compete, they'll think I'm looking for a job, right? So there is some issues with that as well too. I think it's important.
Right, if you have a non-compete, if someone breaks a non-compete, you should go after this person.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you lose contact your people not tell it. It doesn't mean anything because they don't do anything. And sometimes it costs more money than you lose to sue someone that breaks a non-compete. So it's kind of
I think it depends on the message you want to send as well as anyone else who will be considering leaving because you're not going to enforce it.
I think the big belief out there is they're non-enforceable. Everybody says, they're not enforceable, but
There's all kinds of.
you're saying that they are.
Absolutely.
yeah.
Wasn't there some sort of legislation passed recently about that? You have to, there has to be some sort of financial
Consideration, yes.
Right,
Some
right.
type of consideration. So it can be as simple as, a new job title. So you go from being the janitor to the manager. That's a new change and consideration to take that new position. So that would be enough. Financial incentive is helpful. I think everyone is happy with that, except for the person going out.
Of course.
But is there any limit on what that is? Meaning, you sign on to be here $100. You were financially compensated for that, or, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I don't know the answer. I mean, $100 doesn't sound like enough to me.
Yeah, but it's incentive, you've been
Right.
incentivized.
Yeah, extra vacation time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be a significant incentive. Any other thoughts?
Spurred a lot of conversation on that.
Yeah, it's a hot button, right? People, they vote for him. State and asset protection planning. So I'm just going to go over some basic estate planning initially because everybody needs it, whether you're the business owner or the employee. You should have, especially for a business owner, we've got documents we use during lifetime, right? So we have healthcare documents and we have power of attorney that we use while we're living. A durable power of attorney allows you to appoint a third person to stand in your shoes and act for you on your behalf with, according to the powers that you give them. So for a business owner, a lot of times I will recommend that maybe you should have 2 agents that are acting, one that is in control of making business decisions on your behalf with a power of attorney, and one that is a family member that makes all the other decisions related to your personal maintenance. And then similarly, we have a healthcare surrogate document which allows you to appoint a third person to make medical decisions on your behalf, and you're unable to do so. And then a living will is simply your declaration of whether you want life support in a catastrophic situation. So those are the basic documents that we use while you're living. I should back up and include the revocable living trust is also a document that's used while you're living. You are able to fund that with your assets, and that can be real property and tangible property as well. And that trust allows you to appoint a trustee. Typically, the grantor and the trustee are the same in the revocable living trust. And if you become incapacitated, you have a successor trustee provision in there, and that person can act on your behalf and can continue your affairs for you. And sometimes that can kind of take over that durable power of attorney position if you're completely incapacitated. Along with a revocable trust, I recommend that you create a pour-over will. And a pour-over will is simply, we treat it in my practice kind of as a backup document. In case you did not put something in the trust, you didn't fund it properly, there's something left over in your name, then that asset would be subject to probate. And in the probate process, the administrator of your estate pours that asset into the trust. So the trustee is the document that controls and distributes your assets.
Just if you could share with the group, why would you choose a will over a trust or a trust over a will? This so far.
Well, so there are a lot of different reasons. One is probate avoidance, but I don't like that to be the only reason. I like there to be more than one reason for choosing a trust. But probate in Florida can be a process. I have one right now that's going on 2 years, but it's been open, and it's not a super complicated estate. It's got some property and business in it, and mineral rights. I mean, it's complicated but not overly complex. And it's taking 2 years for the beneficiaries to get the proceeds distributed to them. So that is part of the process. In Florida, we try to get everything done in a year, but it all depends on how quickly you have people that are the representatives of the estate acting. So if they're not acting quickly, marshaling assets, it takes longer. And then if there's a will contest or another type of estate contest, then that can take even longer because we have limitations.
I've also heard that some aspects will last forever and some things need to be happened or transactioned or signed in a certain period of time in the recent past. Is that true in this scenario? Or if you've done it once, you're good forever?
What do you mean?
Like, for example, a durable power of attorney or a health scenario.
I would recommend that you update those documents every 5 to 7 years.
Right.
Just take a look at them. They're like any other document you have in your business or in your life. You just want to keep it as an evolving document. The durable power of attorney was updated pretty significantly in 2011, and the healthcare surrogate was updated significantly by our legislature in 2015. So if it's been before that you last updated, then it's definitely time.
Yeah, I would just say that a trust probably needs to be reviewed almost on an annual basis. But because if you don't title your assets in the name of the trust, I think there's a number that I've always heard is probably a little high, that 80% of the assets that are typically needed to be put in the trust are not done in a lot of times, where people don't take the time and effort to retitle assets in the name of their trust. And if they don't do so, unfortunately, that's why the pour-over will is there, because it doesn't happen often enough.
Right, and it doesn't achieve avoiding probate. If it's not funded, then it's not going to avoid probate.
Right. There's a lot of tax issues between a will and a trust, but I try to tell clients, a will is basically when you want to distribute assets, upon your death. Trusts allow you to impact your family and people past your death. You may say someone's not responsible enough, has drug issues or problems within your family, let's say you have a stepson that you may not be too thrilled with at the moment in time that you're concerned with. So things that might be concerns for your family where you want to have an impact or distribute later on.
Sure, or you have minor children, or you have a family member with special needs that needs special needs trust. You can have optional language where a trustee can convert, a trust protector can convert a trust for a child to a supplemental needs trust so they can qualify for government benefits if that ever comes up, because you don't know if you're not here anymore. Something like that. those are kind of the basic plans. And then,
I would add, call it entity selection, and okay, you're starting your entity. Hey, do you think it's going to be successful? Or, hey, most startups don't, they just want to get it going, get revenue. But it may be a good time that when you start that entity, hey, I'm going to put my interest in a trust already to kind of, because then all the appreciation is out of your estate and it's in the trust at that point. So that, but most startups don't think about that, they just want to get going and do it. But if you have one established business, hey, you're going to go start this other one, pretty confident based on your experience it's going to be successful. Hey, if you're just starting out, there's really no value in that company right now because you're just initial capital. So you can contribute, you can put money in to start the company, then you can gift your interest to a trust, and therefore kind of, one, it's asset protection, two, as it appreciates, it's locked in the trust too. So
that's an irrevocable trust, so that you're talking about, right?
Sorry.
There's a question. Doesn't this strategy depend on the size of your assets?
Yes.
If you have like more than X million dollars or X $100,000.
Well, yes and no. So irrevocable trust planning, where you're concerned about pulling assets out of your estate for estate tax purposes for avoidance, then yes, that's a consideration. But revocable trust planning is really there for you to kind of have a little bit more control than you would with a will after your death. So it allows you to dictate how your assets get distributed to your beneficiaries. If you have 3 children that you want your assets to go to, you can stagger that at different ages, 25, 35, 45. You can't control that with a will. Same way.
And for education purposes, if they don't keep their grades at a certain level, you can have a trustee that, you can spell out and say, okay, if my kids are responsible, do the right things, they can have their education paid for. If they don't do the things that are required, don't.
Yeah, your trustee
Yeah.
is a gatekeeper.
There's a lot of emotional, personal, and family issues that can dictate things, not just age.
Yeah.
What about trust from an asset protection standpoint? And how creditors get in trust?
So for the grantor, revocable living trust is not asset protected. It is asset protected for the beneficiaries. So after your death, that trust becomes irrevocable, and it is asset protected from judgment creditors and future ex-spouses of your beneficiaries. So that is a definite benefit to having that trust. For grantors to have asset protection with the trust, it has to become irrevocable, which means you've gifted the assets to the trust and you no longer retain control over those assets, except for a couple of situations where you can still retain control but have gifted the
I own some real estate, a few investment properties, and I've been thinking, okay, do I need to do something with them? Because I mean, they're under my name.
in your name
So-
individually.
Right, so do I need to do like an LLC for each of them? Do I need to do a trust for each of them?
Maybe, yes.
However.
Yes, and maybe. Yes,
got a
we need
big
to do
word
something.
coming your
but
way.
What the answer is, I want to know the more details, but yes, you need to do something. I mean, I don't want them in your name.
It's not that
It's
big.
complicated.
It's not
Just slightly lower than it going to there.
Doesn't your well have to be at a certain level before it goes through a probate court situation?
No. Summary, you can have an estate with a value of $75,000 or less, and that would qualify for summary administration in the probate process. But anything over $75,000, you probate. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about a little bit more complex trust and estate planning. So there is a method or a trust called a grantor retained annuity trust. The grantor is you, the business owner. You can gift assets to a trust for a period of time. You can select that period of time. During that time, you, the grantor, receive an annuity back, so an income stream to you from the trust for a set term. And at the end of that term, the assets go to your beneficiaries either in a family trust or outright, but most often into a family trust. The best types of assets to put into a GRAT are an appreciating asset, so you can put stock in there for a startup company. So a couple things here. The grantor, you have to survive the term. So the term should be, you should take into consideration how old you are when you create this trust. So based on life expectancy, typically 5, 10, 15 years are reasonable terms. As long as you survive that term, then the value of that GRAT is excluded from your estate for estate tax purposes. If you don't, then it can be included in the estate for estate tax. Grantor pays income tax on, these are more dated comments, but does pay income tax on any income received from that annuity gem.
And that annuity term is fixed by IRS tables based on value and interest rates.
Did we go over one of those tables, David? That could have been exciting.
So then this is a strategy for an internal transfer of some kind of interest to the family.
Sure, yeah. So one example I have is a younger business owner put some stock into a GRAT and at the time did not realize how much the asset was going to appreciate. And so at the end of the term, he ended up leaving his children more than he expected to leave them. Age, but it was a little bit of a surprise. Okay, so the next one, kind of a similar concept, is an intentionally defective grantor trust for an IDIT. It's suitable for closely held businesses and that are partnerships and S-corps. The grantor, again, you or the business owner, gift ownership interest to the beneficiaries or successor of the business through the IDIT, but you retain control over the assets. The grantor continues paying tax on the ownership interest, protecting the beneficiary to having to pay a significant tax burden. The grantor's payment of taxes allows the grantor to remove that money from his or her estate, which can be beneficial when the tax rate of the grantor is higher than it is for the beneficiaries, which is usually the case. The value of the grantor's estate, again, is reduced by the amount of the assets that are transferred to the IDIT trust. It's technically considered a sale, not a gift, and the sale is not recognized for federal income tax purposes, right? So no capital gain is triggered. The sale of the assets to the trust by the grantor in exchange for a promissory note, which is a specific amount of time period that you said, typically again 10 to 15 years, pays interest to the grantor, and then at the end of that, the beneficiaries receive the assets that are allowed to grow. Right?
So in both of those, in the GRAT and the IDIT, one common strategy that's used, so the grantor or the can maintain control is, this is all you see in the S-corps, is S-corps can only have one class of stock, with one exception. You have voting and non-voting rights with different stocks. So usually what I see is, okay, the grantor or the founder will have all the voting rights stock and give the non-voting stock away. Therefore, the income is still split based on the overall stock, but the business owner or founder still maintains control of the voting rights. And then you get to the shareholder agreement, okay, what does that mean? What's going to vote on? And what do they control? So it's a good way to split up the income between trust and beneficiaries with the voting and non-voting.
Yeah, I will say that with family-owned companies and closely held corporations, this is a very tax-efficient way to approach a transfer of business stock.
Now you're freezing those assets, the state freezes. Okay, so the next one is a family limited partnership, and this one it can be used for real property. So oftentimes this is a technique. It is family limited partnership, we have a general partner. Oftentimes, that would be the parents of a family-owned business. I want that general partner to be an LLC that has those top level people in there as the members. And that way we limit those owners' liability. If the general partner in a general partnership has personal liability, but if it's an LLC, then it limits the liability of the LLC owner. Okay, so that GP controls the company. They have, and then they can transfer their interest over time. So they can start transferring ownership to family members. So children, grandchildren can all receive units of ownership of the business over time. A flexible way to transfer ownership.
What would be a good percentage discount that could happen in a family limited partnership? Yes.
30 to 40%?
No, you're pushing it forward.
Push away 40, yeah.
Not 90.
No.
Can you explain the discount?
So the discount,
I was going to ask, do these illustrations work for a company that you might have the majority owner, but you also have minority owners that are outside the family? How would that?
I would say it depends on the agreement you have now. And in some of the shareholder partnership agreements state that, hey, you can transfer your interest to a trust without approval. And so you're not really changing ownership. So it kind of depends on the agreement you've already signed. But some of them say, hey, you can transfer your interest to a trust with no implication to the others.
Right.
So I would start there, could possibly.
You guys were talking about that discount thing, I was interested.
No, okay. The discount is saying, okay, you have the fair market value of your company is $1 million. And you're going to give a portion of it to your next generation, your heirs, your
The
beneficiaries.
limited partners in that.
The limited partners. So in this case, the discount says, okay, you're transferring an interest that has limited marketability. It's going to be lack of control. But basically, lack of marketability because they can't sell their interest once it's there. Lack of control because they don't control anything, so you get discounts for that. And usually that comes about 35 to 40% is what it gets to. You may want to get aggressive and go up to 50%, so you take that $1 million and bring it down to $600,000. Therefore, you don't use as much of your annual gift exclusion or your lifetime exclusion when you make that gift. So you want to try to push that down. So there's two things with valuations. It depends what you're doing. If your valuation for gifting, you want it at a low value, so you want all this discount. You're doing a valuation for, hey, I'm going to sell my company, I want a high value. So it depends on the trader and what you tell them, what's the purpose of it. And then they kind of go through the valuation. Because, okay, what do you want? When you're going to report it go out, I don't got it that way. I know we're trying to make that argument to do that, but you still want to, what's the purpose of that valuation?
And I think that's such a good point to remember to not operate in a vacuum. You're not, you have to kind of be thinking about all the different pieces and parts of the picture.
Or if you do that gifting valuation, hey, that's for your file. Don't give it to the potential buyer of your company.
Right,
Hey,
right.
We'll get you a different one, or go get your own. We don't have a full valuation.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's a transfer. And then, I guess, you can do annual gifting, I guess, too, on that transfer of that.
Yeah, so this can happen over time, right? So you want to talk about annual
Yeah, so you get annual gifting, you get $15,000 per person per member. And then you can gift split it to the spouse. So your example will say, okay, you have your daughter and husband are married, you want to gift her interest. So you give them each $15,000 each. So $30,000 you give them annually without affecting anything. No gift tax issues, no valuation. So no income, so that you can do. So if you start doing it over time, $30,000 a year, you got a 20-year plan, hey, you can strip a lot out of your estate. Now you want to give them that interest or not, that's your decision at that point. Or how do you restrict it? It's in the trust. They can't do anything until a certain time. There's certain things you can do for that. But you can do $30,000 a year, okay? You have 5 kids, okay? They're all married. And you have 10, $150,000 a year. So it does add up. Or if you want, if you can strip more out of your estate annually over time, if you want to do that. And that all gets back to what's your taxable estate and what's your effect, and hey, is it an appreciated asset or not? What's going on? So all those things we consider.
I think that's where my question has to be. None of this matters unless your estate is over a certain amount. I mean, it
Well,
matters.
it's for state tax purposes.
Yes.
So right now, we're at
Let's get value, used to be like 2 million a long time ago, I don't know.
So it's 11 per individual, 11.2 for married couples with portability.
How did they come up with that number, 11.2?
Who comes up with this?
What's that?
How did they come up with 11.2?
I don't know.
It was 5 million,
Okay.
and I think they just doubled it. To, I think it was like 5 point, because they index it for inflation.
Oh, right.
So that's the point
That's
two.
why I'm thinking number.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they start with a certain number, and every year they index it
Yeah.
for inflation.
And so that number is set to sunset in 2025, so it'll.
It's 11.2.
So it'll go back to that 6 million-ish number per individual, so you'll have a married couple, 12 million.
So that's the big thing with estate planning right now is, okay, you're gonna do things now, but in 2025, 2026, hey, it's gonna revert back. So is your plan still in effect at that time? Or how do you have to adjust it for how the laws revert? Or are they gonna change it in 2024 and then you're gonna be okay?
Right. Do they extend it beyond that?
Yeah, a lot of things left up in the air.
We don't know.
It's unsettled.
So we have to go down all of those rabbit holes, figure out the best steps.
Just a question.
Yeah.
Can you share how the asset protection and control features of this strategy works when you talk about general partnership unit, for example, and how does the owner extract income out of there? And I will mention too, I'm a good friend of mine, 20 years, who actually set up one of these back in 1999 when the exclusion was, I think, $600,000. And he's got a fairly complex family setup. This structure, actually, it doesn't matter what, I mean, he's got probably $3 million in there now. It's actually crucial because he's stage 4 cancer. He'll probably not be with us by the end of the year. But this structure is actually guiding all of his post-death wishes, and it's going to be a business that succeeds him. And it's got its own successor trustees that are going to take control of the general partnership. So I will lobby, if there is a sunset like we're talking about, let's just say 4 or 5 times in the past 100 years, the estate taxing has been repealed, right? Actually, not repealed, it's gone back to its old provision. So I would say nothing is forever. But if you could speak to how the income comes out of that general partnership.
I would add, plan for today and let you know, and adjust later. Don't wait until 2025 or 2026, that, okay, I'll do it then. If you need a plan now. You really don't know what's in the future. Into the income allocation, one benefit partnerships have over S corps is partnerships are very flexible in what you can do. So S corps are very rigid in the sense the income is always going to be allocated based on ownership, the percentage. With partnerships, you can do special allocations. You can say, okay, from this amount goes to this person, and you can get very detailed and say, okay, you can, one example is you contribute property with a special allocation. So you have a cost basis of $400,000 and property is worth $1 million. So you have $600,000 gain already. That gain will always be specifically allocated to you when it's sold. The other partners will get the appreciation. So for Jeff's question on how you can allocate the income, it can be very flexible in what you want. It can be the limited partners only get internal rate of return at 20%, and everything else above that goes 50-50 between the general partner and the limited partner. It's really wide open in how flexible you can be with allocating the income between the general partner and the limited partner, and that's probably what Jeff's talking about with his friend is, hey, we got a nice plan on how we want to do it. The family limited partnership allowed them that flexibility to allocate the income as needed.
How much control percentage-wise Partners over the years?
60%. Yeah, so, but the objective was to ultimately do 99, but still, it'll still work for a group.
Want to buy sell?
Okay, awesome. My name's Clint Griffiths, I hadn't met you before. Going to go over buy-sell agreements a little bit. I am also a Gator, but I got my certified financial planning license through UCF, so I think Jeff was just messing with me a little bit. Anyhow, but you got it. Oh, you got a clip for me? Thank you. I appreciate it. Buy-sell agreements are really to provide continuation of businesses. When a partner or owner needs to retire, or have a disability, or if you have a death. One real-world example I've always thought of is, could you imagine in 1985 when Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs weren't getting along and decided to leave Apple, if a good continuation process and a shareholder process wasn't in place for that company to continue and to be in place? And they had the iMac, the iPad. It was very easy to call the phone, the iPhone, through Apple. But if Jobs had had to go and do this all himself, could you imagine a handheld device called the Jobs? That wouldn't work very well from a marketing standpoint. You'd get into trouble. So you might even have the same phone. So anyhow, hopefully y'all will get that eventually. It'll take a little while. Bad joke. Anyhow, on a more serious thing with buy-sell agreements, I had some people we know that had a car dealership. Brothers Jeremy and Jeff had a dealership had it for about 15 years, and they had built it up. Jeff was really on the operations side, and Jeremy was on the sales and marketing side. They built up the business, had families, and one day, basically Jeremy passed away, had a heart attack. And so you have a business that's been ran by the two brothers, held and operated. Jeremy's wife, Norma, was extremely upset upon the death, really didn't know what to do, how their family was going to be okay and what they were going to have to deal with. She knew that the brother was also trying to grapple with taking care of the business and handle everything that was going on. But through all that stress, Norma had to sit there and go, okay, I need to have a meeting to know what's going to happen to me and happen to my kids and how things are going to work out for us. And luckily, the brothers had thought in advance to put a buy-sell agreement in place and insurance policies in place that allowed both of them, allowed an insurance policy to take care of the purchase of Jeremy's portion of the dealership. And Norma and her family were able to go on, take care of the kids, and also provide continuation of the business, where Jeff didn't have to worry about who was going to come in and start and assist him and help him. He still had to hire somebody to handle the other side of the business, but was able to take care of that. Change that for me. Yeah. So there are a couple of main ways in which you do buy-sell agreements. The first one we'll talk about is an entity purchase, but this has some potential consequences from a tax standpoint that you need to be really well aware of when you get with your other partners and put it in place. This situation is where an insurance policy is typically used to fund the purchase of an owner's portion of the business, but the insurance policy is held by the company itself. And some issues that can come up with that usually are from a tax standpoint. If it was a C Corp, you may not get a step up in basis, and the reason why we typically use life insurance policies is that you want to step up in basis for when you buy out the portion of the owner, whether they're retiring or whether they have a situation where a death has occurred. And you can go ahead and do that. So this is kind of a flow chart of how that would operationally handle. You've got that in your package, so we're not going to go over that in detail. We don't have the time to do that. But just realize that if you put in place an entity purchase where the insurance policies are worked and utilized through the business, there are some potential tax issues associated with that. You want to make sure that you have a step-up in basis in regard to those insurance policies. Also, when the business owns the insurance policies, the proceeds that come to the family or the person that might be that is going to receive that may have it come in as dividends and be taxable almost as ordinary income and much more taxable than if it were capital gains. And so really you want to think about this and get some help and assistance on the front end. The way that's utilized mostly is usually a cross purchase. So if you have and you can go ahead and move the next flow chart. Yeah. So in a cross purchase, basically, if you had, just to keep it simple, if you had two owners of the business, each owner would have an insurance policy on the other owner. Okay, and you can typically do that if you have up to three owners. After that, typically there's some ways to still use a cross purchase, but you do it through a trustee's arrangement or a partnership arrangement, and to try to keep the tax benefits associated with a cross purchase agreement in place. So you really want to get some help and assistance associated with that. In a cross purchase arrangement, when you own each other's policies, when the insurance policy, someone passes away in the insurance policy, the proceeds of the insurance policy are really, you get a step up in basis. You also, when you receive the proceeds of the insurance policy, you really receive the capital gains, so your tax benefits are lower to the family that receives the proceeds. So there's many tax advantages to try to utilize a cross purchase arrangement. And sometimes people will get advice and say, oh, you've got more than 2 or 3 owners. Cross purchase might not make sense for you. Well, there's other ways through a trustee basis or partnership basis to potentially still do it, right? I think that's the big thing to get across on that, is that cross purchase is typically tax-wise better, and try to think of that a way to be able to implement that if you can, rather than having your business itself on the insurance policies.
I think it gets back to what we talked earlier about risk. Okay, think through the risk. If something does happen to an employee or another owner, Paul shared an example of that. So, okay, what happens? Now, same thing. So, think it through. If something does happen to one of your partners, what's going to happen? Are you going to have to deal with the spouse and the estate, or is there a buy-sell agreement in place to say, okay, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to have to buy it for X amount, or I'm going to value it for X, and I'm going to have to pay his or her estate for that share. And you know what's going to happen.
Buy-sell agreements can also address disability.
And
It's more likely that you'll use a disability policy than a life insurance policy.
Also, the life insurance policies can use to fix the value for the business, but that means you're going to have to review and look at your life insurance policies on a regular basis, potentially increase those on an annual basis to make sure that it's around and close to that true value of your business. If you don't do that, then there's going to have to be some other supplements to help provide the true value to the family of the person that they lost. We can go to the next one. One-way or unilateral buy-sell agreement is typically when you have a family member that may not currently have ownership or an interest in the business, or if you've got a key person within your company that you think can continue the business and you would like to sell to eventually. If you pull up the flow chart on that, it's a little complex, so you have to think about these things in advance. But basically what you can do is you can bonus out the premiums to a key employee or to a family member, allow them to be able to purchase the insurance policy directly, and then be able to purchase the business through the proceeds of a life insurance policy. Any questions on that? I'm kind of going very quickly because we're running out of time. Any questions on it? Okay. Good. Once you put a buy-sell agreement in place, you really have to think about what is the best way for that value of that business to be determined so that fair value is being provided to the family members of the owner or the person that's retiring. Typically, it's truly based on the type of business that you have. Some businesses utilize book value, and then sometimes that doesn't provide. Book value would be something like a financial business, right?
Retained earnings.
Yeah. Yep. And you do some kind of multiple based on that? Capitalization of earnings is often used if there's could be some major changes in regard to income that are coming forward in the future. Utilize that. Go to the next one. Sometimes you can do a combination of both. A lot of times what you'll see is appraisal being done on a specific date, which would be on the end of the year preceding someone's passing away, or on the date of death, which allows you to give a specific cost basis step up in the value. Right? You see cutthroat used very often?
No, we call them gunshot.
Yeah, in the name it kind of tells you, it kind of says, oh, I don't utilize that. What happens is that the seller has a lot more power and pull because they're the one determining the price. The reason why getting a buy-sell agreement as early as possible is so important is because if you have two active owners or multiple active owners involved in determining what a fair value is, it's going to be much easier for people to be agreeable about the value of the business and how to determine that. Once someone is passed away or not available, then all of a sudden the power structure determining what those values are, you become more in conflict in regard to coming up with a fair value. And that's the reason why cutthroat's not used very well.
We have a group of doctors right now that are investing in business together if you wanted a gunshot provision. I think because of the group, the dynamic, they wanted to be able to have, one has the power to set the price, buy it out.
Also, you have to realize that if you don't review your buy-sell agreements on a regular basis, and even if you do, there may be situations where you're going to need funding sources, especially in a retirement situation, way over and above what a life insurance policy or a disability policy is going to provide. And so that's where you bring in a situation where you might have to do an installment purchase in regard to it, as well as financing. And you may be okay with financing on your business, but between the life insurance policy and the financing that might be available to you as an entity, you want to make sure that between the two of them that the resources that are needed can be there at the time of purchase. Chris, have you had anything in regard to Keyman life policies or anything that have come up in regard to those situations?
A lot of times when we're dealing with business acquisitions where obviously you're dealing with owners who are selling their business, but then the new owners who we're financing a lot of the times, we will require life insurance policies if that owner is the driver of that business. There's really, it would be hard for them to be easily replaced. Think of a business like a single practice doctor's office, right? The doctor's gone, it's hard for someone else to step in and maintain that business. So if we're doing a sizable loan to them to acquire a competitor's practice, we may require life insurance for that reason, for the term of the loan.
Any questions on, there are numerous types that we're not going to be able to go over. There's also a wait and see type of a buy and sell agreement that's available. Have you done some of the wait and see agreements out there?
Allows you to build in the option of a stock purchase or an entity.
Right. It gives you flexibility in what the actual sales price would be, a wait and see agreement, but it's highly complex. The cash flow, the flow chart for that, I'd have to have a double-sided board to be able to get that across. But you need to know that there are a lot of different options available to you, and get professional help as early as you can on the front end, because it's hard to go over it, it's complex, and it's very specific to the issues associated with your business that you may be dealing with.
We could include the overall incentive compensation plan too for the employee, saying, hey, we talked about, hey, how do you keep engaged and how do you keep around? Well, maybe it's a buy-sell. I'll give you the money, I'll bonus you out the money for the life insurance. Hey, you're going to agree to use those proceeds to buy my interest out. And that's a way that you can kind of handcuff a little, get commitment from those employees. Say, hey, I'm putting this out here for you. It's there if something happens.
And also, typically, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Who's doing the valuation of the business as a future value creation? And that buy-sell agreement, are you saying you can have a buy-sell today and say that you're getting a third of the business and it's worth $1 million when I die? Is that something
You
that
can do it
happens?
both ways, yes, yes.
You're gonna have to get a qualified appraiser to value the business. So it says in there, you could do, you just say, you're gonna have to get 2 qualified appraisers, you're gonna take the average of the 2. Or you're gonna have to get one, if you already know one, hey, you're gonna use XYZ company for the valuation. And then they're gonna take those discounts into account, lack of market value, lack of control, and get to a value. Or you're not gonna use those, you're just gonna say it's the 100%.
And sometimes you can put a provision in that buy-sell agreement that says, and if there's a disagreement at the date of the determining point, then you go to XYZ valuation expert to come up with the value. But you can tailor it to your needs.
Or the value is just 1 times revenue.
Right.
I mean, it's a simple way, but we just make it as simple as that.
And if you have to, right, and even if you have insurance policies to fix a value for your business, if you're reviewing that annually and you increase the insurance policies when they're needed, that makes an argument for what that value is, I think. Where from a cost basis standpoint, a tax basis, you're staying on top of this and it come upon an agreed value that, from a tax standpoint, that won't be more willing to accept that.
Yeah, Glenn, just to your point, Vicki, when it comes to what's the value now, there are less expensive options out there. We actually do estimates of value that are not expensive at all, and you can revalue your company every year based upon that what we'll call thumbnail, right? But certainly at death, when the buy-sell agreement would be executed, you would follow David's advice there on a certified appraisal or 2, you know.
Yeah, this applies to any business way below the $11 million or $22 million level, right? You want to get that step up in basis for the value of your business if you lose a part. And so it's an extremely important thing to stay up on a regular basis, I think.
I would recommend if anybody has a family deal, like when my mother passed away in 2009 and I owned a portion and she owned like, I think 60%, got divided up between the 4 of us. There was arguments between the brother and sister. Obviously I was going to buy, I had to buy, sell, and I had to buy from them. But arguments on how much my business was worth.
Yes.
That business was worth at the time. So I'm just, you definitely have to have those.
Keeping a regular, if you can keep having regular meetings, that's a part of your agenda on an annual basis and reviewing those policies. There's also different types of policies. Most of these are funded by term policies because they're so much less expensive. They're a whole lot less expensive than a whole lot policy, but those have term limits. So let's say you've got a 20-year term policy that's associated with this. You're going to have to address how you're going to fund this way before the end of those 20 years because those policies are going to be a whole lot more expensive at the end of the 20 years and if you're going to have a whole lot of policy that's going to take the place of those because you're going to make this a lifetime thing, those are going to be a whole lot more expensive and you sure want to address that, you know, as close to the front end as you can. Term versus whole.
No, the only thing I would add to that is you can't get kind of a last to die or survivor policy for 2. So that's always key when you have multiple or two key people in there. Okay, it's going to go from, I'll use Eric and Paul as an example. It's going to go from Paul to Eric, and if Eric's the last one, then Eric's going to pay out the benefit. The life insurance policy is going to go to whoever's left and where they designate, or buying him out and go to his area. You can do those last to die policies.
Yeah, that's a lot of times that's used for a husband and wife ownership of the business rather than, let's say, brothers that might have separate families or.
Yeah, I'm not going to do with the client, but there's a husband and wife in the business. Right. And they're key employees and they're shareholders. So that's how I identify.
Yeah. The husband and wife, those last to die make a lot more sense in regard to it. Any other questions? The buy-sell agreements? Keys to address them early and discuss them with your partners.
All right, I think we're okay. Thank you very much.